Sarah, do you ever think about at times there's albums and parts of their careers can be summed up through trilogies of records?
Yeah.
Do you know who's a great example of that?
Who?
Jethro Tull. So, good evening everybody, or morning, or whatever. It's not even evening, I don't know why I'm saying good evening.
Okay.
But that's the way I am today, okay? I've been out and about. It's June and it's raining and it's horrible. Okay, so
Well, that's Ireland.
I want some summer. Please give me some summer, and I don't want to have to fly to Spain to get it. But there you go. So today we're going to be talking about Jethro Tull. They seem to kind of creatively work in these trilogies of albums. I don't know whether that's real or it's just some kind of pattern that I'm seeing in the music myself, you know. But to me, that's the way things seem to have worked with.
Yeah.
So, are you in agreement with that?
I am, yeah.
Okay,
And
okay.
I've definitely heard it elsewhere as well, so it's not just you, don't worry.
Thank God for that, thank God for that. We're all pattern-seeking animals, good band, by the way. And we see these patterns in things, and sometimes they're there and sometimes they're not. But in Jethro Tull, I definitely see this kind of trilogy thing. So, I mean, the story of Jethro Tull, the first album, this was Jethro Tull. I don't have a copy of it, I'm afraid, but I've heard it on many occasions. They started out in 1968, and as we were looking at in our 1967 albums in review, a lot of bands from 67 onwards, and even like starting kind of the first little movements were in 66, would have been moving away from this Americana thing, you know, and moving more towards kind of expanding the repertoire of what they do. You know, an awful lot of these bands began by playing blues, and Jethro Tull were no exception. So they had the great Mick Abrams involved with them initially on that album. Mick Abrams was basically a blues guitarist. And as Ian Anderson took over the reins of things, he very kind of insightfully said that there was enough guitarists around, so that's why he took up the flute. Very clever move on his part. So 1968 saw Jethro Tull kind of behind the curve of still producing a kind of mainly blues orientated album. Good album in its own right, and I saw some kind of film and things of when they did that kind of back to the pub tour when the original guys got back together again and everything, and it looked really cool, it looked great. But I suppose there was an absolute plethora of these blues bands around. They're singing about levies and things and living in England and didn't even know what a levy was. So quite rightfully they decided to move on, and then in 1969 we get Stand Up. Now I know this is a particular favourite of yours, Sarah.
Yeah, things just came together with this. I feel like they really just kind of settled into their own sound.
Yeah.
And that folkiness really came to fruition in the music.
Yeah.
It's an absolutely fantastic album, and they didn't lose their roots either, because there's a lot of real kind of rockin' tunes on it, and that bluesy influence is still there. Like
there is. I mean, the secret sauce in this is Martin Barre joining the band, and his repertoire as a guitarist, and also Ian Anderson is doing some acoustic guitar on here. But it is a very, it's a very interesting album. It's a very good album. They're starting to kind of open up the sound, and I would say it's one of the important albums of prog, you know, because it's one of those 1969 albums that are kind of really showing the way forward.
Oh my god, like, I mean, it was so ahead of its time as well. I mean, they just, the amount of things they brought together in it is just crazy, and it was fantastic. So good.
So they're bringing that kind of folk element into the rock and everything like that, and they're exploring it. Then we get Benefit after that. It's a record I find very difficult to stay engaged with. I know you like it very much.
They pulled back on it though, big time.
You think I just feel like it wasn't enough of a step forward from stand up.
Yeah, it wasn't though. And I feel like it was kind of they went hell for later on stand up, and then they went in to do this and were like, okay, just kind of wind it back a bit there. Like, It is, I can understand why it'd be hard to get into.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things I'd have on while I'm doing stuff around the house and that. I wouldn't really kind of immerse myself in it.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I like it, but I find myself kind of drifting away as it's on.
Yeah.
You know, but what I can hear in it is that they're kind of codifying what they did in stand up. They're kind of creating, you know, stand up. There's all different bits and bolts and things now, but in this it's kind of more smooth.
Yeah.
And it's better produced and things like that as well. So yeah, good album, great album. And there we have like the first trilogy of albums, we could say. So we're going from 1968, 69, 70, and we see Jethro Tull during that period kind of finding their sound and experimenting a lot. So then what happens in 1971 is it just takes off.
This is when he really brought that theatric characterization into the music and everything, and it's just amazing.
I suppose so. Yeah. The kind of, he was always kind of tramp-like, I think, on the earlier.
He still is.
Even in the earlier albums. but he kind of brought that into fruition on this and into a kind of deeper characterization. An amazing album, an absolutely astounding album. The first two albums by Jethro Tull I ever heard were Stand Up first, and then this, and the two of them are just mind blowing. I mean, this is an amazing album. This is, this is going straight into Prog. You know, there's kind of arrangements, different kind of, lots of changing in tempo, changing in, the timbre of the music, like going from like loud down to this soft dynamic shifts in things and everything. It is absolutely incredible, and it just shows this band were kind of moving into that prog space more than anything, I suppose, which we now call prog, but at the time I suppose they didn't really.
Yeah.
Oh dear God, I have 2 copies of this. Shows I should double check. Exposed, yes. So Thick as a Brick comes after that, 1972. So here we have the band fully embracing like the idea of concept albums, even though it's a concept album, kind of taking the mickey out of concept albums. But that's also part of this kind of English aesthetic that they were bringing to the music. So it's very Python-esque and that sort of thing. And I think it's fantastic. I love the album. I put it on and it just takes me on a journey, just from start to finish. It's just an amazing album. All one piece of music. Sorry, Terry.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about all the stuff that it reminded me of when I first heard it. You know, like when you've grown up reading things like the Beano and stuff like that. Just all that stuff kind of came into it, and it just all the string quartet they brought into it and everything was just brilliant.
It's amazing.
And I know they're saying they were taking the mick with it and all, but Jesus, some job for taking the mick.
No, it's great. It's great. Yeah, it's a fabulous album. I mean, hats off to Ian Anderson and the guys. I mean, this was, what they've been doing. The first trilogy, great, like exploring and trying to find something, and moving into this trilogy where you're taking this thing to the absolute limits. It's like going into space.
Yeah.
So we had that. So then we move on to A Passion Play, which is 1973 then, which is an amazing album again, all one track again.
Yeah.
Darker album. I noticed a lot of the real kind of prog people really rate this as like, some of them rated as Tull's masterpiece. To me, you see, that can change from day to day. But I do think it's an amazing piece of music. It's darker. It's all one piece of music again. They found a format that worked. Thick as a Brick was a very successful album, and so was this. You should remember that these things like were very popular and sold a lot in their
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
But another amazing album, sense of humour in it again. We've got the kind of the idea of the local theatre company and all this sort of thing involved in it. It's, you know, you've got the kind of Pilgrim's Progress thing, the journey into the netherworld and everything like this, with all sorts of imagery of tea ladies, carts and things involved in them. Again, that wonderful kind of English aesthetic going on in this as well.
Yeah.
Fantastic album, love it. I think with those three, we've now got the trilogy of Aqualung, Take Us a Break, and Passion Play. And what we've got there, to me, is the height of Jethro Tull. Creatively, I think this is the zenith of that
They
band.
were banging them out one after the other.
Yeah,
that
yeah,
time, like.
1 year after another, and
Yeah.
just masterpieces, and incredible albums, and things that I could see people in 100 years' time going back and looking at these things as pieces of art from that period. So, what do you do after you've done that? So you've done 2 albums then, one track going over both sides of the album. So what do you do then? You try and draw it back in, which is what Jethro Tull go and do with War Child. I find this album, it's not one I reach for a hell of a lot.
The amount of stuff that they have, right? Their discography is massive, and they've so much like crazy good stuff. This one is very boring for me to listen to.
Yeah. I call this the kind of the minstrel trilogy. You know, it's kind of, so we've moved from the Prog trilogy. We've the initial trilogy, the Prog trilogy, the minstrel trilogy, and what we're finding here, I believe this was the idea behind some of this was that it was the soundtrack to a movie, and it never got made. So we've Jethro Tull, like, you know, it isn't that they're kind of pulling everything back in. They're still being creative, but they're trying to go into other fields that aren't their area of expertise.
Yeah.
Like movie soundtracks and getting involved in making a movie around the album and all this sort of thing, which is like huge amount of work, huge body of work. So it didn't quite come off as the movie and the album came out. And I mean, there's some great tracks on here, you know, but having said that, there's also some that are kind of a bit throwaway and light, I feel, okay? So especially after something like a Passion Play to go into that. So then in the middle of the Minstrel trilogy, we go to the Minstrel in the Gallery.
I love Minstrel in the Gallery. Yes. I do. Compared to War Child, it hits a lot harder, and the songs they have this weird structure again, comes kind of back into it. You have like Minstrel in the Gallery, my lord, and lady, and la 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 la.
Yeah.
The Minstrel in the Gallery, and it comes out and like I grew up with the BBC on the telly quite a lot.
You did, yes.
So there would have been programmes and stuff on that would be about like the Victorian times.
Yeah, I know you used to be listening to BBC Radio 4.
Yeah, it's very nostalgic to me to listen to this.
Yeah.
And I love then that element of rock and roll coming into it, and it's just brilliant to me. Like, I really, really enjoy this.
Yeah, it's a great album, and it's them playing to their strengths again. So like there is that kind of what I described in the more prog arena ones, you know, it's more that dynamic in the music, longer pieces of music, Baker Street Muse, another great track, like, you know, and they're kind of I mean, they're basically playing to their strengths in this. There's no other way of putting it. Like, they do what the band does well.
Yeah, it reminds me of Aqualung a lot.
It would do, yeah.
Because you know, like in Black Satin Dancer, where it's like the flute and then Martin Barr comes in like, and I think it's great.
Yeah. No, it is. It's a very good album. Very kind of slick album too.
Yeah.
Even though it probably was a bit of a nightmare to produce, but at the same time, it's a very slick album. This is the started codpiece era here as well. So we've got the and all of that I associate with like the characterization of this minstrel character, and he's here to entertain. And whether it's going with movies or he's going with records and live shows or whatever way the minstrel is going to come to us, which brings us to the last of the minstrel trilogy, which is Too Old to Rock and Roll and Too Young to Die, which was a television special.
Yeah, which not many people know about as well.
I would actually, ask anyone that hasn't seen it to search it out on YouTube. It does exist. It is there. You probably put a link to it.
I will in the description.
Yeah, and it's really well worth watching, and it brings all the story of the album comes to life in it as well. The centre pages have a kind of comic strip. Telling the story as well, which is well worth engaging with. So you get the whole thing of it. So we again have this kind of multimedia version of the band again. So they're on television. The album ties in with the television special. I'm sure it was something that was there to be played late at night or something on television stations or whatever. They used to have a lot of continuity things on television back in the 70s. You wouldn't remember that, where they'd have to put something on for half an hour or something because something broke down in the system, So, and I'm sure it was kind of meant to be something that could fall in like that as well. But yeah, absolutely, I like this album. A lot of people tend to knock it, but I do like it. It kind of go on.
I feel like it's really a vinyl experience, like, to listen to that, because before I'd seen the television special, I didn't know about it. I sat down and listened to it, and I had to have like the comic open in front of me the whole time, and I kind of read along with it as the album was playing. I really appreciate things like that because I'm a huge art freak, and I think, like I said earlier, growing up reading the Beano and the Dandy and all this was so like, oh my god, like music and comics coming together, and I thought it was a really good idea.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people do knock it, but when you think about it from that point of view, that it was more an artistic intention for you to interact with it this way, it's actually a fantastic album.
Well, a lot of people say it was Ian Anderson seeing the coming doom of the band, that he knew punk rock was coming and he thought he would end up like some rock and roll dinosaur. But to me too, it harks back with a kind of nostalgia to an era that he grew up in and kind of started his kind of rock and roll journey in, where there was these rockers and greasers and what have you and everything like that, and he obviously identified with it, and the whole thing kind of has that feel of the rocker and greaser story about it. So it's a fun album. I like it, and it's our channel. So.
Tough. That was very bold.
Okay. So I get to one that I remember was in the record shop when I went down kind of looking for... I went down to the record shop, and that's what a guy said to me one day. He said, you're into kind of rock and music and things. I said, yeah. And he said to me, he picked this out. He said, you see that guy? I said, yeah. He said, he plays flute in a real rockin' band. He said, standing on one leg. So there was a kind of Fame reissue of Stand Up came out at the same time. I think I bought that, and I don't know where it went. And then a friend, he was more of an acquaintance than a friend, a guy I knew. He got mad into Jethro Tull, and he used to buy loads of stuff by him. And it would be all sitting around my house. I don't know why he used to buy these things. He'd come in with, I've got the latest Jethro Tull album, I'll leave it with you. But hey ho, what harm, it meant I didn't have to buy the stuff on a bit later on in life, and then when we lost touch. But Songs from the Woods, this is the beginning then of the what would you call this one, the pastoral trilogy, so to speak. I find with the I suppose I have to say something that kind of jumped out of me just as we're talking here, was with the minstrel trilogy and with the Prog trilogy. It's kind of the middle album, and even with the first trilogy too, it's kind of the middle album that sticks out as the very kind of creative one.
Yeah.
For some reason or another, but hey, maybe I'm seeing patterns that don't exist again. Oh jeez. Right, so Songs from the Wood, great album. Totally thrown into this kind of Englishness, stories of Jack in the Green, and you know, little sprites and things like that live in the woods and all sorts of things, and you know, I love it. I love the title track. I think it's just fantastic. Peabarock, Velvet Green, The Whistler. I mean, and there's a kind of joy about this album, an innocence and a joy. Even though, like, he wasn't innocent or joyful or whatever.
Yeah,
you know,
he's quite miserable. Like.
he kind of, I think he kind of retreated to the country himself a bit to get away from the whole rock and roll thing. And yeah, it was kind of, I suppose, I went to live in the country once. We lived in the country, didn't we, Tara? And I kind of had this initial joy of being in the country and the sprites and things, and then the reality starts to hit you eventually. God, what was I thinking? So Sounds from the Wood, yeah, great album, very good album, very strong album. I have a friend who's into kind of Irish folk music, and he plays the flute, and somebody said to him, you know, you should listen to Jethro Tull, and he came in and I was kind of going through albums going, what about this, what about this, and when I hit this one he went, he got it, you know.
Yeah.
You know, so that was good. So the next one after that's Heavy Horses. So yeah, I like this album too. It's not, to me, this isn't quite as strong as Songs from the Wood. It's lovely though, a very nice album again, pastoral, beautiful, all about the farms and the passing of the old ways, etc., etc. And how things were done traditionally on farms, the cat, the mouse, the heavy horses themselves. Remember when I lived in England, this was like a kind of very popular Jethro Tull album around people, and there was a real nostalgia with people I knew about heavy horses, you know, for some reason or another. I don't know. I suppose like it, you know, symbol of a time gone by, you know. There was Young's Brewery in Wandsworth. They used to keep heavy horses. Even when I was living in England, they used to deliver the casks in the middle of London on the big dray cart with heavy horses pulling it.
Wow.
You know, so I don't know if they still do it, but yeah. So we've kind of gone into all sorts of stories here. But yeah. What do you think then, Tara?
Like you say that, I mean, I grew up in the countryside, so these are all very nostalgic for me, and I mean, like, Songs from the Wood would have been one of my introductions to Jethro Tull when I used to sit down and put on Planet Rock radio on the television when I was younger. So yeah, I think they're good, like, you know, I wouldn't be, like, roaring about them being, like, bangers or whatever, but I do enjoy them, yeah. Yeah,
so that's the Pastoral Trilogy, yeah? Yeah, so then we get to the last bit of the Pastoral Trilogy, which is Stormwatch. Brilliant album. I only discovered this a few years ago. I only bought it, and you know, 1979, I can remember all the Margaret Thatcher and the Winter of Discontent and all that stuff, and the coming storm and the kind of economic models, like based on greed and selfishness and everything and all this sort of thing. And and I think he's kind of throwing the warning shot with this album, you know. So we get the kind of, from the fairies and the sprites to the kind of traditional things kind of disappearing, and you know, the modern world leaking into kind of, here comes the modern world, it's coming like a train, look out, it's going to hit you thing. Lyrically it's very good. It's a harder album than the other ones.
It's dark.
It's
dark, and it's scary to listen to as well, you know. It kind of puts a bit of fear into you.
Yeah.
Which I think is great.
Yeah.
He really got the message across, and I mean, as someone listening to it now at my age, I feel like it stood the test of time as well, and it's still completely relevant.
It did. It's a brilliant album. So I mean, across the Pastoral Trilogy, I mean, the three of them are really good albums. I kind of, different days I'll put on a different one, and it's kind of hard to pick out like which one is the best from the era. Generally the one I'd reach for the least to be Heavy Horses, I think. Although, like, I understand if somebody loves that, so don't shout at me in the comments and say, oh, I love Heavy Horses, how dare you, you know, just talking about myself here. We all hear things differently. Okay, so then we go on to A, which is, what year was this, 1980, was it? Yeah. So what we had here was Ian Anderson wanted to do a solo album. Went off with a different bunch of guys except for Martin Bear. So he has the great Eddie Jobson on this even, you know. And he was trying to make a solo album. The record company said no, we want it as a Jethro Tull album. So it went out as a Jethro Tull album. Unfortunately, of course, the schism with all his old buddies in the band, and it was very sad, you know. But what we have here is a change. He's kind of going more towards a bit more of a kind of modern 80s sound. So, you know, what do you do after the pastoral thing? You got to do some good songs on this. You know, I like Flying Dale Flyer, Working John, Working Joe. There's an awful lot that I like on this album, actually, looking at it. Protect and Survive, Crossfire. Yeah, lot. I mean, it's not a terrible album, but it is a change, and it's there's quite a shift in this.
Yeah.
What do you think, Tara?
I just, as a whole, I don't think it's very strong at all. And I mean, like, coming off of that last trilogy they did, I think it was a step down from what they were doing.
Yeah. It's almost like they went back full circle to where they were in the late 60s, early 70s, where they went back into exploring because technology had changed and how albums were made was changing. And I think Ian Anderson was trying to kind of move along and stay relevant along with it.
Yeah.
So he pulled out that. Then the middle album again in this trilogy, which we'll call, what do we call this, the modern age or the 80s trilogy?
Yeah, the
80s trilogy, okay.
It's very of its time.
So the next one then was Broadsword and the Beast, and I remember this when it came into the record shop and I thought it was fabulous. I think the cover is mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
And the whole thing is set up side one Beastie and side two Broadsword, so you kind of almost that's kind of a feel of Aqualome about it, isn't it? Where the two sides are teamed again. So we get Beastie, Falling on Hard Times, Flying Colours, Slow Marching Band, kind of very Scottish feel to a lot of Beastie. He's, I think at this time he's kind of trying to be the Laird in Scotland with his salmon farming venture. The other side then, Broadsword, is a bit more kind of Tullish.
Yeah.
More like your traditional Jethro Tull. I think it's a very strong album. I think it fits in quite well with all the other canon and their stuff. But it is gone, it is still a bit more, you'd know they were using different types of synthesizer and things.
That's
like
it, yeah. There's a weaker element to it, like, but it's still good. Like, I wouldn't knock it now. Like, I will say I do listen to it quite a lot, like, but compared again to what came before, it's a step down.
Well, you see, I mean, I can see the songwriting and things are the same, but some of the instrumentation has changed, and that kind of changes some of the sound of it a bit. So Broadsword and the Beast, not a bad album. Like out of the kind of modern 80s trilogy, it's a very strong album, because then we get to the last of the 80s trilogy, which is Under Wraps.
We don't like to speak of this in our house.
No. My friend or acquaintance that I said that likes Jethro Tull, or liked Jethro Tull when we were young, he used to come in with whatever purchase he'd had, and he came in one evening with Under Wraps, and he said, you have to listen to this thing. He said, I don't know. I said, what do you mean you don't know? He said, I just don't know. And we put it on, and I think we got through about 3 or 4 tracks, and I said to him, take that off my bloody stereo. I said, the cover, look at that cover even, it's awful, it's horrendous, you know. You've gone from things that look like pieces of art to rubbish, you know. This is absolute rubbish, and it's a portent of what it contains. This album is awful, okay. I hear people online lately saying, oh, they should redo it. It's not that bad. They should redo it with drums and with acoustic drums and with different things. No, they shouldn't. They should burn every copy of it in existence. It is horrible. It destroyed the whole legacy and sound of the band. It is horrific. And you can leave all the comments you like if you like it. I won't be reading any of them. this is my opinion and that's my view. I cannot stick this thing. It is horrendous. It is so 80s and horrible. I was listening to this music during the 80s to escape from that plastic crap that I heard around the place. Please don't throw this at me then. So this was awful.
And that actually destroyed his voice, didn't it?
That's it. He went on the tour of it, and he had laryngitis or something, and he overstrained his voice, and it was never the same.
Completely damaged his vocal cords, and that was it.
I get what he was trying to do. Don't try remixing this or doing anything with it, because to me, the reason why I tend to buy vinyl albums and everything is that I want to get the piece of art that the artist meant us to have at the time. I don't want bonus tracks, live recordings or anything like that. I want none of that. I want the piece of art that the artist meant us to engage with. That's what they meant us to engage with. That's what Ian Anderson had in mind.
Let's just forget about it, leave it in the past where it belongs, and never remix it or bring it back up again.
So anyway, that's enough ranting about that. So after that, the output of Jethro Tull became very sporadic. We had Crest of a Knave, which famously got a rock Grammy Award above Metallica. Not a great album, not really excited. But Rock Island, not a great
Not for
album.
me. Not for me.
I found on some of these too, he's kind of singing about he sees a young lady in the bear or something like that, and he's getting a bit old for that sort of thing. It's a bit creepy, So Rock Island, not a great album. If you like these albums, well and good, don't argue with me. I don't want to hear it. Okay. Catfish Rising, not a great album. Some of these things they sound like Jethro Tull does ZZ Top. Jethro Tull does what's the name of that crowd? Dire Straits. That stuff. Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not great. None of those will hold up against the earlier stuff that we looked at.
No.
So, to me, Up on the Broadsword and the Beast, I'd recommend any of those albums to anyone. I think they're great.
Absolutely,
Great band, love them. Completely changed what they did on Under Wraps, and from then on they were a bit poor. Then we had Roots to Branches, which I think is quite a good album. This is the kind of best of their latter day albums, I think.
Yeah.
Because they tried something new on it again. They went off into kind of ethnic things. He's using more wooden flutes and things like that, which is very nice, I think.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, there's a few good tracks on it. The title track itself and a few other bits. Very good. After that then, that was it with me. I was out, so...
Yeah, I've heard bits and pieces from the Zygote.
Ziggy. What is it?
Zygote. I can't pronounce it. I can't remember what the full name of it is even, for God's sake.
Which one is that?
The one where he's topless on the cover and he's like...
Is it the something gene?
Zealot gene.
The Zealot gene. The Zealot gene. Sorry, brain is gone.
And I've heard some of rock fluta, and that was okay, but it was just kind of to me now personally, don't come for me for this, but it was like a desperation to sound like the earlier Jethro Tull that did Aqualung and stuff, and his voice is destroyed. You can hear that, his voice is
gone.
And Martin Barr isn't there, which you can really notice. And it's just. It's not for me anymore to be chasing Jethro Tull because the earlier stuff was great and I have to listen to everything they do.
Yeah, having said that, the stuff from the Zealot Gene and Rock Fluta, it's not bad music or anything, but
not.
his voice is gone.
Yeah.
Martin Bear, you would miss Martin Bear in the thing, and his flute playing is still pretty good. Songs are okay, but I think he'd be better off just calling him Ian Anderson solo albums.
Yeah.
It's just cashing in on a brand rather than that, is what I say. But yeah, I mean, that's our analysis of the trilogies.
Yeah, and I mean they're a fun band to get into as well. Absolutely,
Great band. Yeah.
Highly recommend if anyone. I'm sure all of you know them well, like, but if you don't, then absolutely dive in. Like, their stuff is fantastic, and we're not here knocking them. Or
No,
like,
don't
so,
get us wrong. I mean, the reason that I'm annoyed over Under Wraps and things is because it just felt like a kick in the zealots. when I put it on, because like you know, as I said, I was listening to this stuff that had all these dynamics and different timbre in it and everything to escape from that plastic synthesized sound. And next thing I heard this thing, and I just thought, what in the name of God have you done? And I think a lot of people did, because that was kind of when Jethro Tull, as the kind of populist band, imploded on itself, you know. But there we go. So we don't need to do a video on when did Jethro Tull go bad, like some of our going bad videos lately. But if you saw or you like what you saw, if you saw what you liked, if you liked what you saw, please subscribe to us. You know, it's the subscriber numbers that kind of keeps us motivated, because then it shows that there's people out there interested in seeing this stuff. Please comment below if you've anything to add, but don't start arguing with me, telling me that you know, something like what is this, Rock Island is the best album they ever made or something like that. I just don't want to engage in any of that sort of thing. Okay, okay. To me, Jethro Tull ended after Broadsword and the Beast, and I just leave me with my little memories and things, and don't be.
Leave them alone.
Yeah, leave me with those things. You know, there seems to be a lot of people out there that like, you know, bands that are flogging a dead horse, to be honest with you, to me. And if you do, that's great, you know, you're welcome to it, but I'm just here to give my opinion. And
and I mean, like, they're a band that I like to dive into their earlier stuff, and I'd be the same as him. I did check out the newer stuff to see what it was like, and it was just like meh. So I prefer to go back and dive into when they were at their peak.
Yeah.
Because it's fun.
Yeah, cool. So remember, hit that subscribe button, talk to us in the comments, like the video, and we'll see you next time. Bye.